Shanahan was asked, is Brock QB1? Is there a quarterback competition? What's the thought process there? Shanahan said he hadn't even begun to thought about it, but to think about it. But then he threw in this line, quote, that stuff will play itself out by training camp. Now, Brock's not going to be ready before training camp. So I almost wonder if Kyle looks at it like, hey, Trey, you could put yourself in the conversation, but you got to do something before camp to win that. Otherwise, when Brock comes back, it's his. Again, I feel like this is unfair to Trey, right? They're once again, right? They're throwing him into the pool with no swimming lessons and saying, don't drown. It's like, okay, you've got the beginning part of OTAs before training camp to win the starting job. And if you don't, even though you've barely played in 2 seasons and you haven't started and finished back-to-back weeks since 2019, you better win the starting job. That's your chance. And if you don't, forget it.
Well, the thing I hate is some people aren't practice players. And if it's a practice thing, it is what it is. But some people get a lot better when they get game action. Like you can't even say it's inexperience because you got somebody like Jalen Hurts. He had as much starting experience in college as you can get. Played in a national championship, top level, 2 different programs because he transferred. And yet he still took 2 years starting in the NFL to hit a new level. It took him time of starting to get there. So I don't think it's fair to kind of write the book on a guy when he hasn't even gotten the chance to prove it.
Right. And, I've heard, and again, it's so funny to go back now. I don't remember this in training camp, but people now are telling me, oh, Trey's training camp was awful. It was horrible. It was miserable. He was really, really bad at times. And I'm like, okay, maybe that's true, but I've seen this guy play in the games. I wasn't there for training camp, so I don't know, but I saw the games.
I've seen that. If that is true, then say that shit at training camp. I hate when people do that. If somebody's playing that poorly at training camp and you're not saying it, you're not doing your job. So to come out 6 months later or 3-4 months later saying, oh, well, he was terrible in training camp, we all knew this, it's just hogwash to put it in a way that you don't have to bleep.
Well, so none of this stuff that I'm hearing about Trey's terrible performance is on the record, right? It's just things that people are telling me, which is another thing.
There's been some actual beat reporters that have said, yeah, we saw this in training camp when talking about Trey Lance's deficiencies. It's like, oh, really? Where was that report?
I agree with you, especially when it's the quarterback, that they gave up 3 first-round picks plus to acquire, right? Like, if he's bad, say he's bad. And so, but my point on that is maybe he was, I wasn't there, but I saw the games, and I don't think his games were nearly as terrible as people make it out to be. The first game against the Cardinals, if you want to say he didn't look good, okay. They were undefeated at the time, and that was his first ever game in the NFL. Okay, he had a bad game. Like, that's our barometer. That's what we're going by. The Texans game, I thought he looked better than he did in the Arizona game. Week 1 in Chicago was a monsoon. And I thought, he only played 2 drives in Seattle and he went right down the field on both times. So, like, again, I just don't understand the conclusions that people are drawing. And if it's based on these, like, practice rumors or whatever, I agree with you, Levin. Maybe he doesn't practice great, but neither did Jimmy Garoppolo. We had no problem throwing him out there for all those games.